Philomythia podcast.
Beautiful. Terrible, but whatever.
Episode 2. I think in the old podcast, that's what we'd always say after the claps. We're like, that was horrible. It's terrible. It's not
Unless it was a good one. Because there were a few that were pretty good.
Right. It all syncs up at the end.
Yeah, it's post-production.
All right. Welcome back, dear listener, to episode number 2, which is French for 2.
I'm Ian.
That's Ian. I'm Eric.
That's Eric.
I guess we should start with our names sometimes.
Yeah, because you never
Listening
know.
back, I was like, what is this?
Right, we'll probably have to talk about what this is each time. We're 2 people.
I think it's your turn to give the splain.
Fuck. Well, we're 2 guys that love stories.
We're just 2 dudes.
We love video games and stories and D&D. And this is kind of a podcast about us bouncing ideas, learning things, discussing stories. Kind of a how to do these things. But it's not like coming from professionals or people that have been doing it for a long time. This is coming from 2 people that are learning it right now and then sharing this kind of like learning experience and how it evolves and what we learn from being dungeon masters, storytellers. We're also, me and Eric have been playing music for many, many, many years. A lot of those years we've been playing together, or at least side by side, because we were just always around. But it's been over 20 years, so
yeah, it's true. It's true.
So yeah, I mean that's a little basic intro to what this is.
Yeah, it's kind of like passion for stories with a D&D focus, maybe. It's kind of the thing.
Or almost like a tabletop game focus.
There you
whether
go.
It's,
yeah.
It could be applied to really any
tabletop.
Yeah, we're just not super, but we're becoming more familiar with D&D 5e, but we've been playing since, not even playing, we've been into it since like 2nd edition or AD&D. I think you played 4th edition a little bit, or 3rd.
No, I played 3.5 and 3, but not extensively. I think a lot of people probably had this experience where you'd start and you'd play a couple sessions and then it just mysteriously evaporate.
Right.
And then you'd start another one up and you play a few sessions and then it just implode. It's weird how much dedication it takes to really like keep D&D going.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
The fact that this group we're playing with is almost like we'll be coming up on 2 years in a few months. I mean,
we still
chunk
got a
of months.
bit, but
right, but it's coming up where
it's coming up.
Yeah, like I think I've missed maybe 2 or 3 sessions, maybe.
I've never missed a session.
That's right.
Never.
Yeah, it's been wild. I remember when we first started, we wanted to we would try and schedule like little sessions in the week sometimes.
You were super stoked about it.
Right. And then, the pandemic it didn't really calm down, but people got more information. So people started going out a little bit more. And then it was harder to schedule because most of the people we play with have families and stuff.
They have kids. They need to exercise their kids, take them on regular walks. Kids and wives and you give them some fresh air and sunlight every once in a while.
Definitely.
If you're single, you can just stay in your cave and be like,
it's my cave.
Open the window.
Yeah, open. All my blinds are shut right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my window's closed. I did open it today, though.
Are you above ground? I thought you were below ground.
No, I'm below ground. I have a window that's like in a well, but I can still see like the side walkway of the house and everything.
Oh, okay. So it's not super deep. You're just kind of in there.
It's not super deep. The foundation's really thick is the trade-off. Very, very, very. It's like it's a new foundation. They like doubled the thickness of it.
What the
So
fuck?
Again, why I have no reception in my room. Like no cell reception.
That's why we have to always use apps to talk to each other.
Yeah. Just use Wi-Fi all the time. All right. So what are we doing? Where are we going? What are we doing today, Ian?
Today, we are going to talk about whatever we want to.
And you have to listen to it. Don't leave.
Please stay. It'll be fun.
Did you make any notes? I made notes.
I think
You
you know
didn't make any
the
notes.
answer to that question.
Yeah.
I try to keep all my notes up here, and
That's
I've learned over many
not
years
efficient.
that I get to keep about one note,
One
And
note
that's-
that's half remembered.
and it's usually show up. That's the note I remember.
What do you think about that, Bill? Well, I had some thoughts, but I forgot them. So I'm just going to sit here and listen politely.
That's me. Well,
Yeah.
no, that's not me. I don't listen politely. I don't know. I know you've got some
Sometimes.
things to say. There's some things that I could talk about. So
Sweet.
let's start with something you've got.
Okay. Well, to kick it off, I figured we would talk about what is a dungeon master. Since we're dungeon masters and that's kind of our perspective on the game, I would say, when we talk about it a lot, is like as dungeon masters first and player second, right?
Right.
Like, I think we think about the structure of the game and planning and, building good sessions and stuff like that. So, not that we don't love playing, but I definitely love DMing more than playing.
See, I love.
Like, maybe if I was... Go ahead.
Oh, I really love both. Like, there's a part of the DMing aspect that I really, really love,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's a part of being the player that I really, really love. So it's really kind of, I'm torn of which do I like more. I
Right.
love them both, man. I really love playing, and I really love DMing, especially if you're gonna like talk about the high of each one. Like a really good
Right.
session as a player, it feels great, man. Like
Mhm.
just like we had that session yesterday, it felt so good
Yeah.
to nail a session where everyone gets to play, everyone does something like meaningful interactions in the game.
Right.
Things that
Right.
and meaningful meaning that it's meaningful to the character. Does it have to be a story changing thing? No. It
Right.
just needs to mean something. And the same thing applies to the DM. DMing that same situation where you're just hitting a stride with each player where they all get to do something and everyone's smiling, everyone's having a good time, or maybe some people are sad because their situation didn't go better. They made a choice and it didn't work out.
Right.
But that's still meaningful interaction.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, the high on both of those is they're pretty equal. But you like the high from the DM.
I like I like being the person who when you do a good session you facilitated that experience.
Yeah.
That to me is kind of like, I think it's what I always wanted from like performing on stage like as a musician, but never really got it. I get more from D&D.
Oh,
oddly
absolutely.
enough. But
Well,
just
you're-
that like everybody's super stoked and you're kind of, when it's a good session because everyone hangs out for a while instead
Yeah.
of like immediately, because we play online, listeners. So we play through, we have Zoom up and then we play through Roll20. But when it's good, people hang out and you chat and, you're just, everyone's naturally talking about it. So, and you kind of feel like you did your job. I think a lot of times when it feels bad, when you're like, that sucked, it's like your unspoken needs aren't being met. You may not even know what it is, but you're just like, I'm frustrated and I don't know why.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. I found too, like, I made my character for the Friday campaign that we play. My original character has left the group, at least for the time being, probably indefinitely. He has things that he's doing right now, off screen, so to speak, off table. But my new character is a rogue, and my old character was a caster, and I really playing a rogue, things really clicked. Like
Right.
I love playing a rogue and sneaking around and doing reconnaissance and breaking into places you shouldn't be and do it undetected. I got detected last night, but it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault.
I definitely want to tell that story in a minute.
Yeah, please do.
But
or Gail was.
Well, that's because that definitely seems like that's where you hit being a player, where you're like, "Ooh, I do like this," but still, you're the one that kind of pushed me to like even try doing the DM thing,
Right?
And the idea of this.
Let's back up. I didn't push you. You're like, "Huh, that'd be fun." I was like, "You should do it."
Right.
Yeah, you should do it. Yeah, I should. I'm not gonna tell you any of the pain. You just do it.
So,
build the stuff.
The idea of this question is, what does it mean to be a dungeon master? So I'm going to tell you from somebody that was like pushed into doing it in a kind way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can call it inspired instead of pushed.
We could say nudged.
You inspired me. So watching Eric DM and watching my friend John DM, they're very different, but there's so much that I loved about him. And Eric really scratches this certain want of story and consequence when he's the DM, and I really liked that. And then our friend John does great improv and does great voices and great combat. So I really wanted to create, when I like have those two is like what I look at, was like, I want to make the best of both of those worlds. So as the idea of being a dungeon master, when you hear it, you're like, what does that mean?
Right.
So like the idea of me doing it was like, I get to be the one that is like, no, we're not going to do ability checks like that. We're not going to do this. We're going to create, I wanted to create super powerful characters that were just already overpowered, and they were going to become more powerful.
Right.
And I would tell Eric about these things. In being a dungeon master, I was thought to myself how the story will play out, how the characters will go. And I made everybody like choose like archetypes of their favorite heroes, or create something that they love from, anything that they really loved. And everybody came up with some pretty crazy characters. And being a dungeon master, when you first start jumping in to create a homebrew, the experience that you have is, I don't even know, it's so grandiose. It's so big and so huge. And you start the beginnings of your planning, and you kind of create the first little bit, and then you realize how much there is to create. When you do that.
There's so much.
Yeah. And I learned a lot from just jumping right in. So creating these super powerful characters, because you want, if you're the DM like me, you want your characters to feel strong, to feel like they could do anything, and that they could do anything. So I created this world, and as I'm like now we're a few sessions into it, I've learned that the way that D&D was set up is actually a pretty good marker for like damage rolls and ability checks, and there's a reason why they have these things set up the way they are and not the way I shoved them to be.
Right.
Because now I'm competing with characters that are so powerful, and like it's so hard to like challenge them with anything, because they're beyond what I understood
right
when I first started DMing. So it was this huge learning thing for me of, power levels. There's a reason that we do like a D20 and like a +3 or a +4 to something is actually huge.
Right.
Rather than some of my characters have like +16s and shit. And it's like, why don't you just like ramp that down so like the numbers are smaller, but they're still just as consequential. And it's like, oh,
Right.
you mean like how they are in D&D? Fuck.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing to interject really quick is that's kind of how 3rd edition was the numbers were way larger, and there was more math involved and more modifiers, and that's what they talk about, like rules bloat and power creep. Like things just kept expanding. So 4th edition I'm not as familiar with, but I know 4th edition went up to level 30 instead of 20, so I would assume they would have similar power creep issues, but I don't know. But 5th edition, you can tell they really rolled it back, and they're like, hey, let's keep it simpler, because I mean, each time you add like a +1 modifier, you're adding 5% to your chance of success. So if you have a +5, that's what, 25 a 25% uptick in your chance of success. So that's pretty good. That's pretty
insane.
Yeah. You know.
So when you all of a sudden you give them a +16, well, the chance
that's 130% chance increase.
Right. So then you just have to increase the DCs, and now it's like, what am I even doing? I could have kept the numbers small.
Right.
And they still would have that same gravity, and the math would be so. To me, to go back to the original question, what does it mean to be a DM?
Mm-hmm.
It's to learn so much so quickly. And it's like, another good comparison is, you want to be a musician, go perform. Right. Go get on stage.
Yep.
And like, even when you feel like you're not good, well, anytime you go to perform, you're never gonna feel good enough.
Right.
That's not to say don't practice and not prepare. That's to say go do it. Like, go prepare and just go do it. Don't put it off to be like, I need to have this and this in place. No, you don't. Just go do it. Just do it. Go to a coffee shop.
That's the same thing we did with this podcast, where I was like, hey, Ian, we should do a podcast again. And he's like, okay, how soon you want to do it? I was like, let's do it in a couple weeks. And he was like, what? Like, can't we wait a little bit? Nope, we're gonna dive right in. We know we've done a little bit of this before. We'll be all right.
And then I was like, okay, I guess I gotta buy a microphone and I gotta get a few things. And he's like, get it. We're gonna record next week. I'm like,
fucking do it.
Okay. But yeah, it really does. You learn so much about why when you just jump in. So to me, being a DM is to learn all the time. It's a constant state of learning. There's never an end to being a DM. I mean, for me, this is me explaining what it feels to me.
Right.
There's never an end to being a DM. The skill will always evolve. Right. You'll learn a new game and find aspects of that game that you like, and that will change the way that you may run some, like, if you're like, you play, just to use this, Magic the Gathering, and you like this weird aspect of that, you all of a sudden pull some sort of version of that into your campaign that you're running for your friends. It's
sure.
It's a constant change.
Yeah.
For me.
And actually there are RPGs that do use only cards, like no dice. So that's totally a precedent for that kind of thing. It would be really interesting, since Wizards of the Coast owns both Magic and D&D, if you could find some way to integrate some of the Magic cards, even like the mana. Maybe like your mana cards are like that represents your spell slots or something.
Right.
You could like bring in like different colors. But yeah, I like that. I think too, learning, like just jumping in and doing it, minimizes white room theory. And you're getting all your stuff is hands-on, and you get to see firsthand, like, oh, that's why I don't want to do it that way.
Right.
That's why that doesn't work. I'll always remember that now. I've learned it. I've encapsulated it. I can move on, learn other things.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's quicker, is because you're not just, you read a lot of stuff just on the page. You're like, that doesn't make sense. Not realizing, they've play tested this and they've tried it out and they've gotten people's opinions, and like they put it through They've given it its table time. you
Right.
know? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is to me.
Nice, I like it.
I mean, another part of that would be you have to be comfortable not knowing and like learning all the time.
Yeah.
And
For
being
sure.
open to the idea that you may have spent 6 months learning this certain thing and then find something out, you're like, oh fuck, I misunderstood that, or this is a better way of interpreting that, and now you need to redo something.
Right.
And to be okay with that, and also your players, having players that are being cool is also a pretty big piece too, because understanding that everyone's learning this game because it's a constant evolution, because it's always emerging as something.
Right. For
So
sure.
there you go.
Nice. I like it. I just looked up definitions because I'm like, I have my idea of what a DM is and what it means to me, but I'm like, okay, what does the internet say? What does the world say about what a DM is? And most of it's pretty surface and like, for me, doesn't really get to the core of, okay, again, what are you doing? What does this mean in terms of like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and plan out a session or run a session, like in the nitty gritty, but it's in the ballpark. So the first one, I think this was just from Google, and Google gets their stuff from the Cambridge Dictionary. So that's where their definitions come from, apparently. I learned that today.
Why? The dictionaries now come up in both episodes.
I know, it'll come up a lot. I use it all the time. Okay, so as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, it says a DM or dungeon master. I also put game master in there because dungeon master is specific to D&D most of the time.
Right,
I think it's
that's
also
true.
Licensed.
Yeah,
So
probably. So GM's more
more
universal.
generic. And I have some stuff on that too, a little bit of the history. But it's a person who organizes and oversees the playing of the fantasy role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons, in particular by narrating the details of the story that are not controlled by the players. Quote unquote, taking on the role of a dungeon master is no simple task. So that's putting the term in a sentence, essentially. Which is like, okay, yeah, I mean that's in the ballpark. But if you've been a dungeon master, you're like, there's more to it than just that. That you're not controlling everything by any means, because the players completely throw a wrench into it. But it's close. And then another definition I have is in the game of Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, role-playing game, the dungeon master is the game organizer and participant in charge of creating the details and challenges of a given adventure while maintaining a realistic continuity of events. In effect, the dungeon master controls all aspects of the game except for the actions of the PCs or player characters, and describes to the characters what their characters experience, or describes to the players, rather. The title DM was invented by Tactical Studies Rules, which is what TSR stands for, which is like the most disappointing thing ever. Because TSR, you remember the logo with the red dragon?
Yeah, for sure.
It seemed like the epitome of fantasy, right?
Oh, it was like Wizards of the Coast before it was that. TSR was like...
TSR was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it stands for Tactical Studies Rules? Stupid. Anyways, I'm sure that had to do with chainmail and all that. So it came out in 1975 with the second rule book. They had the 3 little brown books back in the day, and I think the second one, just like tradition holds today, is kind of the Dungeon Master Guide. I don't think they called it that. And then to avoid infringement of TSR's trademarks, other terms have been used. So Game Master, Games Operations Director, which is a backronym of God. A backronym is making an acronym after the fact, I guess. Judge, referee, storyteller. Yeah.
A lot of these terms I do not like.
Yeah, they seem like they missed the mark, or they seem pretentious.
Game Master is great. Boom. Done.
Game Master's good. I mean, DM or Dungeon Master just has a ring to it, even though people don't like the connotation necessarily.
Right.
There are other kinds of Dungeon Masters that we won't talk about today.
The ones that are like you know.
They have whips and they have actual dungeons and there's leather involved.
Yikes.
There's some other names depending upon the genre or style of tabletop game. So, such as the Keeper of the Arcane Lore from Call of Cthulhu, or the Hollyhock God from Nobilis. Nobilis? I don't even know what. I've never heard of that one before. So, my personal thing, I mean, I came up with the word, is that DMs are philomyths. So they're people who love stories. And again, this is my definition. It's not necessarily this. I'm sure people will disagree with this. That's totally fine. But you're obsessed with stories and adventures, whether it's books or comic books or movies or audio plays, video games. Like, that's why I consume all this content. It's not necessarily for the gameplay, and if it's a video game, even though that's important, it's the story that those characters are going through.
Oh, yeah.
And the plot and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, it always comes back to that, is like carrying that thing forward, even if the story is emergent. So even if you're coming up with it, you're letting the players, like, maybe they're hearing rumors in town and they hear about some dragon out in a cave that they're has treasure, and that's where your story starts. Like, you didn't plan out this huge linear campaign or anything like that.
Right.
It still comes down to that tension, like the same mechanics apply for the players, like why they're going to invest in going to do those things and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what these above descriptions miss for me, is the DM is not in control. Like, the DM sets up the parameters of what's going to happen, and then the players come in and basically break the china in the china shop. And then the DM basically emulates the fallout from that chaos. That's what I feel like the DM really does, is like, oh, I didn't plan on that, and now I'm going to improvise and figure out how to make
organizers.
This work. Yeah. So for me, it's more again about the story and the emergent properties. And that's the motivation for learning the rules and figuring out mechanics and doing all the other stuff, I would say. Again, not right or wrong, but that's why it's like the best version of storytelling for me. And really, D&D and tabletop RPGs, to me, feel like a continuation of the oral tradition. Like, it's all description and language and talking at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I get you.
Yeah. So what makes a good DM, Ian?
That is such a large question and such a opinionated question.
It's true.
If I were to generalize it,
well, let's say for you.
For me,
yeah. What do you, if you're a player, what are you looking for in a great DM or a good DM? Like, what's going to hit those marks? Like, yep, they did everything. Like, I had the best experience. I had the best time in that session.
I guess I would want someone that is able to see what each player uniquely wants from playing the game. Because everyone's a little different. So, I mean, you might have a player in your campaign that just wants combat. You have another player that just loves to role play. You have somebody else that likes a little of both. You have somebody else that loves exploring. And then you have another dude that loves combat. A good DM, to me, is able to see, or what I would want from a DM is someone that's able to see those aspects and consistently turn out content that satisfies everybody's want from the game.
Right.
Because with so many different wants, I mean, you can't always satisfy the combat-driven people. Like, that'll drive the role players away. That'll drive the explorers away. But if you could find a way to incorporate the combat and the exploration, well, there you've taken care of a chunk of the group. Now, if you can take care of the role-playing within that, then you've done something really good.
Right.
So it's
something
just somebody
for everybody, right?
Right. Somebody that knows how to read that within each character, or how to get that information from their players and then deliver it consistently.
Right,
What I mean
right.
by, I don't even mean consistently like every session, but I'm saying like that's able to draw people into the world. So there's
Right.
consistency in the game. So I'm not one day facing down, a band of bandits, and then I'm just some random dude, and then the next day I'm surrounded by 100 guards from the city watch because I took a loaf of bread. That's
Mhm.
not, to me, that would be like, that's weird. Why?
It's no cohesion.
Right. So
Yeah.
that would be the other aspect, is being able to be consistent throughout the game so it feels like a world.
Right.
Whether it's a one-off or a large campaign. Those would be
Right.
things I would look for, I guess,
Yeah.
to like briefly, because it's so nuanced to say what would I like, but that's a pretty good broad stroke of what I would say I like.
Sure. And I mean, I'm sure that will change as you play more and you grow with the game and all that fun stuff. For me, it's definitely, again, I feel like I'm going to end up saying this a lot, so I'm going to apologize now, but table time. So how much time, like, is the DM running games on a regular basis, and have they spent a lot of time running games? I feel like there's kind of a level of comfort, and along with that, grasp of the rule system, whatever that is. So even if I'm a new player, if the DM or GM has a good grasp and they can explain it to me in a simple way where I feel comfortable getting into the game. Because let's be honest, it's always uncomfortable to like delve into a new RPG. It's always I'm uncomfortable right now.
Especially like, and that's even if you know the people pretty well you're playing with. If you're playing with people that like you've only known for like a year or less,
right?
That would increase that factor. We are lucky in the fact that we play with people we've been known for 20 years.
Right.
But that doesn't change the fact that starting the D&D campaigns, each one, you're kind of like,
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of people who meet people first time at the session 1 or session 0 of the game. Like they're meeting them specifically through D&D or whatever they're playing,
Yeah.
So those are two big ones. I would say communication, and that for me is it's a blanket term, but that includes storytelling skills. So actually just your verbiage, like what you're saying, how you're describing, but also like communicating with other humans. So like, are they picking up kind of like what you were saying, but in a more general sense, like, are they able to read their table and their players and see how they think about the game, or how they are going to act in this game world, how they're taking the information you're giving them and acting accordingly, and then some of the other ones are just like, improvisation, and, are they planning, do they have stuff where it feels like it's not just kind of going off the cuff, or it's inconsistent from session to session.
Right.
That can be pretty frustrating for like, wait, you told us this other thing last week. What's happening? And then just if they're good at making calls, like just keeping the game flow going. I think one thing, as much as I love the Friday campaign, one thing that the Friday campaign doesn't have is game flow. So I really appreciate that when you can just keep everything moving, which is probably why DM rulings has really become a thing, so that it's for the sake of like keeping the game momentum going,
Oh, absolutely. And to be fair, on the Friday campaign, we derail a lot just with conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like all the time, we'll be in the middle of something and someone will bring up, "Oh, did you guys see this show?" And then we'll derail for 15 minutes about movies, and then we'll get back. That happens all the time. I'm guilty of it.
Yeah. There's no fixing it in that campaign. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
But I think part of the thing is that's why it's important to me as a DM is to keep that going in my own games, because that's what I really want as a player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last one is world immersion / building player agency into the campaign. So like a DM looking at like their characters' backstories and their contacts and their T-biffs, so their traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, and building that, putting that into the world so that the character that the player is playing is connected to that world. They're not just like, oh, I made a human fighter and they run around and they chop things. He's an orphan, he has no family, and he is perfect. He has no flaws. Goodbye.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty easy character to play for someone's first experience jumping in. But
Sure.
I promise if you roll that character, which some people will, and that's cool, as soon as if you get into playing,
Right.
you're going to notice, having flaws and having other things, a backstory where the DM can pull your character in,
Right.
creates a lot of fun for like we've been saying, it's dynamic.
Right.
All of a sudden your character's confronted with emotional issues, and throughout a battle, all of a sudden you have disadvantage, creating a very fun storytelling moment for, let's be honest, if you succeed through that battle, if your character lives through that creates a really fun story to tell afterwards.
Sure.
So then that creates that three things we were talking about. The DM set up kind of this scenario. The players then are let loose to do what they do. And then when it's done, they talk about the story afterwards. And then you have that
3 modes of play.
Right. And that comes from having those flaws and those backgrounds and having a DM that's aware of them.
Right.
But it's a lot, man. It's a lot.
Yeah. And players, if you think you're going to get out of the DM having leverage over you by being an orphan, just wait till you make friends with your first NPC. Just wait. Okay, flip side. What makes a bad DM, Ian?
Oh, man. It's another opinionated situation.
Yeah, this is the opinion hour with Ian and Eric. This is
My
our
opinion,
opinions. That's all it is.
Something that a bad DM pulls up the curtain too many times of the world.
Yeah.
Which that it really depends. Like if the GM is going to show you their dice rolls always, cool, man. I like that. If they're going to hide, if they're going to hide their dice rolls, make sure it's something consistent. Hide the dice rolls, because that's cool too. I like that. But I don't like seeing them and then not seeing them, then seeing them and then not seeing them. That makes it weird.
Right.
So again, inconsistency from a game master is a problem to me. What else would make a bad GM? Not being aware of basic rules could create situations. It's such a railroading your players a lot, because sometimes you get railroaded. It happens. So I'm not saying if you railroad once. No, I'm saying someone who always is railroading their players, to me, that's not cool. Someone that plays a dungeon master that's out to kill the players, to me, that's not fun. That's not a cool way to be. And again, this is my opinion, a dungeon master that doesn't let things be like as they say, the rule of cool. If you have a dungeon master that doesn't let there be a rule of cool ever, that's not that's not cool for me. That's a bad GM. I don't want to play in that campaign, because that's yeah. But again, this is how I would want. What else would be bad to me? Those would be the main things.
Those are good ones. I like it.
I'm sure that if I really sat down and tried to grasp things,
you could always take notes.
Yeah, I'm mostly trying to
just
like
giving
look
you
at
shit.
I'm mostly trying to think of things that I do
Right.
as a GM that I don't like is what I'm talking about, that I want to correct about what I do. And because I've definitely broken the thing a lot. I've definitely railroaded my players a bunch of times when I was not really aware of how that would work.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when you learn, like, those are. I'm just going to end there. I'm going to stop talking about my flaws as a GM because I have a lot. I'm learning. So
Right. Yeah, that's good. And again, I feel like I need to reiterate, like, this is just our opinions, and we're like journeyman DMs. I feel like we've put in a good chunk of time, but we haven't been playing for decades, like we've been playing music, for instance, or something like that. So, a lot of the ones I wrote down for what makes a bad DM are similar to yours. One of the ones I had in good DMing was that kind of goes along with one of you saying pulling back the curtain. So I feel like good DMing is kind of invisible. Like, you don't really see, it kind of feels like magic from a player's perspective. Like, it just all works, and you're not really aware of all the work that was put into it. It just functions seemingly as it should, even if the DM is going off the cuff and rolling random tables and having to refer to their list of names and whatever else, right? I had, right on the top, I had railroading players as well. And I wanted to differentiate that between a railroad campaign, which I really think is just a linear campaign, which I have no problem with. Railroading players, I feel like, is when players are playing according to the rules, they're rolling their dice, they succeed, and then the DM is finding ways to manipulate that so they fail. Those kind of things where it's like, and the players usually know if you're doing that.
Yeah.
They may be like, wait, what's happening here? And we're all guilty of it, and sometimes you're in a DM bind and you might have to do a little railroading. So I'm not saying never do it, but as a general rule, I feel like that's bad DMing. Like, that shows a lack of your preparation, probably, is what it is as a DM.
Most likely, right?
Yeah. And along with that, disregard for player agency as well. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I think that what you're talking about, that idea of railroading versus kind of like a railroad campaign, there's or like the DM, like you get in a bind. To me, still talking about good DM, bad DM. A good DM, or like a good DM quality, would be able to take those. Like if a player notices that you're doing that, to me that says that that's a bad DM moment, and we all have them, like we said. But a good DM would be able to pull that off without you realizing that what was going on was not good. Like, he needed to change something because of what you were doing. And that, to me, ties into, like, improv, seeing what people want, being able to, like, bend and move with your story that you're trying to convey while your players burn it to the ground. And not stopping player agency at the same time as wanting to deliver a story or something at that moment.
Right.
I got lost in that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I think it makes sense. And there are rules that seem railroady that aren't. Like, for instance, in the monster manual, the monster's hit points, that's the average. So you can roll. You can actually take, like, let's say it's 10d12 for some giant or something, right?
Right.
It gives you the average, but you can roll for that. And, like, for instance, Jim Davis over at WebDM, for like smaller monsters, he'll roll right as they get hit. Like, he'll do it as needed and that kind of thing. So that can seem railroady, but I don't think it is. I think it's when, like, for instance, if you're really excited about bringing out some monster and the players just steamroll it, and so you start manipulating things because the fight is not going how you wanted it to go. Those kind of things.
Right.
So,
well, if you're good, you would be able to hide that from the players with preparation. Like, if they just smash it down, you'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to let them know that they already killed it. I'm going to extend its hit points.
put in some minions or
Right.
fluff it out. Don't just have the one monster, especially in 5th edition. It's not really designed for a party against one big monster. You have to do a lot of work.
I love the minions thing. That's fun.
Yeah.
But that's a
like
different
minions,
conversation. Sorry.
Yes. No, you're good. And again, this is something you said too. Antagonistic DMing. Some people really, I've never played in this and I don't think I would have fun. Some people really like antagonistic DMing. So that's like where the DM is out to get you. And if that's what you want, more power to you. But for me, that would feel, for the game I want, that would feel bad. I want the DM there to be in support of the players having a good experience, not them there like, okay, I'm really going to try to kill your character the whole time. That just feels, I'm going to be metagaming the whole time doing that and stressed.
Oh yeah, if you're going to try and kill me, I'm going to metagame the shit out of this because I don't want to die.
Yeah, because now you're playing another game which is us versus the DM, not our PCs in this world exploring the adventure. You know?
Yeah, it's us versus God all of a sudden.
Yeah,
because God has full awareness of everything.
Yeah,
and I don't in this game. But that's the thing of D&D is, my character, I can do whatever I want as Ian to help my character now if God's going to try and fuck me.
Yeah, yeah. Some people, like I said, some people like it, and probably there are always exceptions to all of these rules. But that's just for me. And I've had some pretty bad experiences, especially in 3rd edition with just different things. Not necessarily even DMs, but it can, I don't like antagonistic playing, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Along kind of with that, valuing rules over players and also player blaming. Like if there's an issue, it's the player's fault kind of thing. Like it's never with the DM, where I feel like the DM they don't control everything, but they set the precedent of the table. Like how people are gonna treat each other, what the house rules are, what's kind of socially expected. I feel like the DM is gonna set the tone for your player group,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the last two are along together, which is lack of planning. Which is, I mean, if you're really experienced, you may not need to plan. I know a lot of DMs who've been playing for decades, they kind of have a repertoire of stuff they can just pull out, like a goblin encounter. So they may not need to plan in the same way. So that varies from DM to DM, I'm sure. But also a lack of grasp on the rule set or mechanics you're using. Like, so if you don't really understand how combat works and you're running a combat, your players are going to have a bad time, and you're probably going to have a bad time. It's not going to be fun. So that's all I had for that. That's what I had.
Well, that's some good stuff right there. I mean,
yeah,
applying all of these things to D&D or any game, if you're just starting out or you're listening to this for inspiration, just doing it is really key, and doing it with people that are going to be okay with the stumbling, because even if you're like a seasoned professional DM, GM, whatever, and you're all of a sudden GMing for a group of people that have never played ever in their life, this is the first time they've ever even done anything with D&D. They've played video games, but they've never played D&D. You're going to need to be okay with those people stumbling all over the game because they have no idea what it is. So it's, being cool with people is, I think that's another big aspect of D&D and how it has created friendships outside. Not within our group, we were already friends, but is that whole thing of being cool with just everyone learning, oh, this is how you do this. Oh, this is cool. Okay, yeah. Right. I'm having a good time here. Let's, everyone wants to have a good time, so let's make it a good time.
Right. Well, the cliche is, this might be changing because tabletop RPGs in general and D&D specifically is so much more popular. But most of the time, everybody wants to play and nobody wants to DM. So if you're first-time DM and all your players are first-time players, it's really an opportunity, again, to set the tone and be like, hey, we're all figuring this out together. So be patient with me. I'm going to be patient with you, and we'll learn as we go. And that's a great environment just to encourage like learning by doing. Again, you know,
and that'll inspire a lot of creativity as well.
Yeah.
People having fun, getting wild with things, bending rules, making rules, having a good time with it. If everyone's there to have a good time, make it fun. Like, if you've never played before and you're like, let's everyone start out at level 5 and let's just do a bunch of combat to see what it's like. Hey, cool, man. You will learn about combat and what type of things can synergize with each other. Like,
absolutely.
Or if you don't have anyone to play with and you're just wondering, what is it like, to have these characters, make an account in Roll20. It's free, and just start creating characters. They have a little character mancer, and just start picking things, and then in the thing you can start rolling the dice and seeing like, what does this attack look like? Like, what does this mean when they say do that? So click it and it'll roll dice for you.
Right. And you could even do I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's you good.
If you go to Roll20, you can also create a character in D&D Beyond. I personally
that's true.
don't like D&D Beyond very much, but a lot of people use it and love it. But Roll20 essentially has the same thing. You can roll dice. Roll20 is nice because even if you haven't bought any of the books, you can use the SRD rules of monsters. So you could pull out a goblin, have your character fight the goblin, see what happens. Just roll for both of them. Move them around. See what goes on. It's just kind of like playing chess against yourself. You get an idea of, this is what happens when I swing my sword with a +2 attack against the goblin. That takes him out. I just killed that goblin almost in one hit, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's it's just a way to learn, to play around if you don't want to. Because D&D can definitely bring you out of yourself, and some people, they're shy and they're not really sure what to do. So, experiment a little, go play around with that type of thing so you're a little bit more comfortable.
Right.
Or if you know people that play, most of the time, if you ask one of your friends that plays, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I can talk to you about D&D for sure. You may not be able to get in on their session because sessions are usually
everybody wants to play.
Yeah.
Right now.
Everyone and adding people like even our Friday campaign sometimes has like 9 players or 8 players, and that's a lot.
Big. Yeah, it's bloated.
And so like if you get like 10 people, that's a lot of players, man. And like let's say each person gets 5 minutes to their turn. That's an hour for everybody to have a turn.
Yeah.
And that's just not consistent to have 5 minutes a turn. Sometimes it's a lot more. Sometimes it's not. But
it averages out though, because some people are really prepared and they go right away, and then some people are like, I didn't prepare. Wait, what does my stuff do? I don't know.
Right.
Let's read through everything. Shit. Hey DM, can you look up this thing for me? No, just go.
Just do your turn.
Yeah, exactly. I think the big thing is just do it, and because you don't know the rules, you'll make risks and you'll make assumptions that you wouldn't otherwise do.
Right.
Which is really good. It can lead you to stuff, and if you have fun, that's all that really matters. If you had a good time, you were playing an RPG. Maybe it didn't really resemble D&D, but that's fine in my book.
Right. Like, if you rolled dice and you had a good time, who cares?
Yeah.
It's a good time. That's what it's meant to be. It's a fun time. So I think that
everything I've read from the Little Brown Books says that that's what they did, is they just kind of figured it out as they went along originally anyways,
Well, that's not what I read in the big book. It said that D&D is of Satan.
Oh, yeah. There are those too. I didn't realize you were one. Why do you love Satan? Is that why you're playing? Are you trying to be closer to him?
Well,
or her. I don't know what Satan's gender is.
You know what the truth is. You know the truth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ian, I think you brushed up on a important point, which a lot of this is about how willing are you to be uncomfortable? Like, how uncomfortable are you willing to be? And finding that threshold. A lot of, especially like, let's say old school nerds, they weren't going to be doing voices for their characters or acting. It's going to be very descriptive and kind of removed, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Get started and do, what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people do voices, some don't. Sometimes my character does a voice, sometimes he doesn't. It's
right.
I do what I want to do when I play D&D each time.
Yeah. I got super anxious, like I talked about last episode, and so it took me a long time to really get into doing voices and stuff. But I feel like I have way better sessions if I really cut loose and push through that discomfort, and do all the things, all the weird voices and stuff.
And I think that inspires.
Go ahead.
It inspires the people you're with to come out of their shells a little bit more sometimes, even if it's just a touch or a tiny bit or a lot. The more fun someone's having, the more fun the other players want to have. So,
for sure,
it's a big that's like a whole nother subject of what's it mean to be a good player. Like, what's a bad player?
Totally.
What's a good player? And that seems like a weird thing to talk about. What does a bad player? Well, I mean, it's pretty hard to be a bad player, because I don't think there's a lot of ways to play D&D and they're all okay. Like, they're all acceptable, but there are certain things that you just shouldn't do when playing D&D typically.
Well, I think there's bad player in terms of a lot of people think like, oh, I'm a bad player because I don't know things, or I don't have experience, where being a bad player has more to do with, okay, how are you affecting the other people at the table?
Exactly.
Like, I call it the second game. It's the social game that you're all playing just as humans sitting around a table telling stories.
Right.
Like, are you ruining it for other people? That could be them, but it's probably you.
Right.
Like, it could just be that they're just a jerk and they hate the way you play or something, but most likely it's something you're doing at the table.
Yeah, and it's typically like, if your character is just doing character things and you're making choices that are doing things and their characters are reacting to that, that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about people that are consistently almost breaking the game on purpose.
Right.
All the time. That to me would be that's not really a fun player that is breaking the game and derailing things on purpose all of the time, when the other players are consistently trying to get things done. That would be like a bad player move. I guess it would come down to understanding people again, like what's going to be accepted socially, because I usually play characters that are they're not mean, but they're not nice.
Right.
So that character, he reacts typically to other characters with gruffness or attitude and
derision.
Yeah. There definitely was a session once where a person got frustrated because of this, because they weren't really aware that I was just being a character. I wasn't really feeling the way I was feeling, and I wasn't saying anything or doing anything that was serious.
Right.
And once they understood that, they were like, "Oh, all right, cool. That's fine then. That makes more sense."
Mm-hmm.
And that, it never was a problem after that. They understood my type of character that plays, and they're like, "Oh, okay. Oh, okay."
Right. Right.
So again, communication, like you said, is a huge thing as a good GM, and that problem was solved through the GM at that table, kind of stopping things and like addressing it, and we resolved it, and it was, we moved forward. It was fine. It was it was a learning experience, because sometimes you're playing with strangers and they don't know you as well as other people do.
Right, and I think that's another thing with players and DMs is like, how do you handle when things do break down? Because they might, especially if you're playing with people you don't know very well and you say the wrong thing in the wrong tone of voice for them. they may not take kindly. But
Right.
are you able to sit down and just talk through it and be like, oh, I didn't realize I was being a dick. I'm sorry. The just simple human things.
Right.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Some people aren't good at it. And so that's something to know.
Yeah.
With bad players, it seems more like, okay, everybody, we're going to play this like politic, like, social situation D&D campaign where it's all about like charisma checks and social relationships. And then Billy makes, Thork the barbarian, and he keeps murdering everybody. And everyone's like, what's happening? And he's like, I'm just playing my character. It's like, well, your character is terrible for this campaign. So I think things like that, a lot of it is contextual. Like, what kind of campaign are you playing?
Right.
And who are you playing with? Because Thork would be great, like, for instance, in the Conan campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Go,
absolutely.
Thork, murder. Just murder everything you see. Clear our path.
Yeah.
So, that's good.
That is
Any
good.
other thoughts about that?
I have a million, but I mean, that's good for now. That's all I got
Sweet.
for now.
So, I think you would agree with this, Ian. DMing, being a DM and doing the things that DMs do, it feels like an art form. Like, it feels like something that's a creative endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember how I got on this tangent, but I started looking up like improvisation and just what it means, like the etymology of it, and also synonyms. So the synonyms for improvise or improvisation are extemporize, impromptu, off the cuff, spontaneous, etc. I mean, it's a pretty well known word, but the definition again from Cambridge. Improvisation, to compose or and perform or deliver without previous preparation. Extemporize, to improvise an acceptance speech. To compose, play, recite, or sing, and then in parentheses, verse, music, etc. on the spur of the moment. To make, provide, or arrange from whatever materials are readily available. So we improvised dinner from yesterday's leftovers. And then I'm not really familiar with extemporize as well. So extempore is like the standard usage word thing. But again, spur of the moment, without premeditation or preparation. So it's interesting looking these up because it's kind of like DMs straddle this tension between planning, like tons of preparation. If you listen to DMs talk, they're going to be talking about prep a lot, like random tables, having your set pieces. So what maps are your players going to be? What cities are they going to? Are they in the wilderness, hex crawls, yada, yada, yada. But you have prep on one side, and then you have improvisation, which means you're just going by the seat of your pants. You just have to, and a lot of that seat of the pants, again, comes from, I think, players not doing what you thought they would do,
Yeah. Which is always.
Always.
So, I
All the
mean,
time.
once in a while they do, you're like, holy shit, they did what I wanted.
Right.
But that's like, when that happens, it's like shocking almost.
Right.
You're like, oh shit, what do I do now? I planned for this.
And I think after a while, if you do certain, like, if the players know they have an incentive for making choice B instead of A, you can set that up and be like, they'll most likely choose this. I don't know specifically what they're going to do to get there, but they're most likely going to go after goal B because I gave them there's a pile of gold and some magic items at the end or something.
Right.
Like, they'll probably, it's the obvious choice. Not guaranteed.
Right. Whatever the hook is you gave them,
Whatever the hook
they
is.
seem to be interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's good. I think
Yeah.
that that's quite a bit there.
Yeah.
New York.
Okay.
No.
So I think last thing, we'll see how long this takes. I always have more, but
no,
we'll keep it sweet. Let's plan a session. for our
No.
campaign that we started
No.
building.
We're not doing that.
No?
Why
We're
we
not
can
doing
do
that?
We can do that.
Welcome, world. The Ian is also known as Mr. No. I'll be like, hey, Ian, you want to do this? No, I don't. How about this? Nope. I don't like it. Do you want to do anything? No, I don't. Okay. That doesn't leave me a lot of room. I don't know what to do about that.
Then it's like, fine, we'll do it. What do you want? What do you want?
Right.
I want to do this. All right, let's do it. Fine.
No, then it starts over. Okay, what do you want? I want this. No. Shit.
Yeah, I am known to be difficult. Okay, session 1. Well, first thing, let's establish, like, if we're going to prep a session, I want a few parameters established for what the session we're prepping is. How many PCs are going to be playing, hypothetically?
Let's just say 4. We'll just
All right,
go
I
with,
like
the
4.
standard amount, quote unquote.
Cool. And what level are we starting them at?
Ooh, I would say level 1.
Oh, okay.
Let's start them out nice and squishy. And this is planned. Session 1 is going to be one in an epic, for the most part, linear campaign. So we're building off the campaign world we did in episode 1. I figured.
Okay.
Like, let's say we don't have everything set in stone, but players are raring to go, and we're like, you know what, we have enough just to get started, and then plan out the campaign.
Now,
as
do we
go.
want to just establish what the players are, or are we just saying there's 4 PCs?
Just 4
doesn't
PCs.
matter.
Just kind of
Doesn't matter.
general.
Basic classes.
Basic classes.
And this is in the world where they're the part of that magisterium group, right?
They're in the Gnostic Nightmare.
The Gnostic Nightmare.
Yeah,
That's,
the Demiurge has the little bubble.
Right.
Thing,
That's the name of the campaign then.
Okay.
Is the
you have to
Gnostic
spell
Nightmare.
Gnostic differently to throw off the literate players.
I think
like
it just
the
needs
ones
to
who
be
know a lot about-
Nosttic. So there's no G on it.
No
So it's
G?
like, what?
Okay.
Or put a K at the beginning.
There you go, Gnostic.
Gnostic.
It's French, guys. It's French. It's related to night, okay?
So I would say that I'm going to go, because like I said in the last episode when we were planning this, you're one of those people that doesn't want this typical, that doesn't want the standard thing that's repeated a lot. But my combat to that is, well, what if the players you're playing with have never done that before? They've never got to experience that. So for them, it's not gauche. Is that the right word?
Gauche, I think.
It's not gauche.
It's not bourgeois.
It's not, yeah. So I would say almost like start with the characters going to eat at the inn or the tavern to start their first day, where they have to that's just where they will kind of go, is the tavern first, because it's their first day here in this town as the what do we even call them? What are they?
We could just call them Inquisitors for now, just as a placeholder.
That'll work. Inquisitors for this little town. Let's establish how big the town is then. How big is it?
I don't know, probably like a couple thousand people.
Ooh, that's a big. I was thinking a couple hundred, but a couple
so
thousand.
You want to go Hamlet style.
No, I think Hamlet style makes it a little too
Hamlet style
podunky. I think having them be kind of part of, like, maybe there's a group of 14 to 16 of the Inquisitors that kind of run shifts at this, or they're like in different outposts that run shifts at a few thousand town. So there's, basic commodities and goods within this place.
Right.
That the players can start out going wherever they need to in there. So they wake up and they need to go report to their outpost at a certain time. So that gives them X amount of time to go wander the city to collect anything they think they might need.
Gotcha. So that's a good example of, like, if we're doing that, my brain would be like, okay, so I need to build out, how do the shifts work? Like, how long do they stay in the city? And then when do they switch out? Is it every couple weeks? Is it like a garrison or an outpost? And not that we have to do that now, but that would be like, ooh, okay, I need to know that. So, game time is going to pass, and then I can track how many days it's been, and then know when they're supposed to actually leave that post. That kind of thing.
Let's say that there's. So let's say that there's like a northwest and a southeast outpost, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're manned basically by 2 groups of like 4. So it's 8 to each one. Now there's a central location that you report to, but those are where that's where you hang out, and the shifts are 1 week. So you're on 1 week on, 1 week off to with these like 4-man outposts.
Okay.
And they're outside of the city, and they're communicated with by some sort of bird, like hawks or bird or owls or some sort of animal.
Are the slowest flying bird.
Yeah, but they're also the quietest. So I guess, hawks would be a good one because they're pretty quick. But that's how they're communicated with, like, as they're out there kind of sending little tiny, like, 2-group patrols to kind of wander this little area.
Right.
If they get information of something that they need to go check out within the city, if it's in their area, they go check it out. But if, other than that, anything that they get, they report and send back each day with the hawk. So there's going to be like a little bird area for it.
You could also do like sending spells too.
Yeah, but I like the idea of the birds. That's funner to me.
You want like a little an aviary where there's like a it's like a part of the culture.
Right. Well, the characters, you might have somebody that bonds with, like, they really like one of the hawks or something, and you let them kind of try and befriend this one, and then you can kill it
Find
later.
Familiar on it and be like, "You're my friend."
Right, and then
We're
kill it
friends
later
now.
because it'll be great.
All right, that's true. You could do that.
But that'll also allow, like, I mean, you could have that could be like your first few sessions where they do a shift at this one and then they're off for a week, and then they go do a shift at the other one and then they're off for a week. But that gives you the first session would be them reporting for day 1 of their shift.
Nice. If they're in 4-person teams, so assuming it seems like it's never 4. It's always like a little. You're gonna have more than 4 or less than 4 that want to play.
Right.
But it seems like it's hard to get it at 4. I guess the Sunday campaign has been 4.
Well, we also said that the whole concept is we have 4 PCs.
I mean, that's just ideal for
right.
Like that's what the game is intended for, as far as how the mechanics work.
Right.
You could say, okay, well, each team is composed of, like, you have a fighter type, and you have to have a caster type. Like, maybe there's some kind of mandate that says each squad has this, that, and the other thing.
Right, that would work.
General. So, like, because, again, I think it'd be cool if you had, like, instead of barbarians necessarily, let's say you're homebrewing again, you have the berserker class. So if you want to be, like, a city barbarian, you can still have the rage and stuff, but you fucking grew up, like, bare knuckle boxing in taverns and stuff.
Right,
right. Those kind of things. So, I like that. The thing I was thinking of is the first session, and again, this is, everybody's had their 0 session, so they know their character a little bit. Their first session is getting called into this emergency meeting by, like, the higher up. First day on the job, and they're like, hey, we got a report that something bad is going on in southern outpost. You need to go now. So there's a short scene of, like, immediacy, you need to leave, and then they're on the road, and you could do some random tables or, see if something happens. Nothing big, like, so if there's a combat, it's very small.
Right.
And then by the time they get to the town or the outpost, you have your big encounter for the session.
Well,
so it's taking more time for them to get there, basically, is what I would do.
I think that still works within the same framework of what I was saying. It adjusts things a little bit to create that urgency rather than letting them meander.
Yeah, and that's, again, not right or wrong. That's how I'm always thinking, is like, okay, how can I manufacture a little bit of urgency for players who have no investment?
Right.
Or very little. They have a little maybe from the 0 sesh. And then I'm always thinking, again, with the fact that the players are going to derail everything in mind, but, like, ideally, where do I want this session to end? where would I like it to end if I had my choice?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, ooh, either right at the middle of that encounter when like the monster hits one of the party and it seems like maybe they died, end it, or right at the end of the encounter.
Right,
so that's like, that gives me a goal, even if it's completely unrealistic and it's not going to happen, to kind of be like, this is where the momentum is heading for me.
Yeah, I like that.
But again, I like the
also-
outposts. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say with your idea, you could also once they get there, you could say that like one of the people from the group that patrols the south that you exchange with now,
Mhm.
one of them's like down,
Right.
like they're injured or dead, whatever you want to do. So like when you get there, that creates all of a sudden even more like, oh shit,
Right.
something's going on.
Right. You could have one of the squads missing too.
Right, that would work. Like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
one of the patrols went out the twos because they'd go in twos.
Yeah, yeah.
One of them's out and like hasn't come back
Missing,
and hasn't
yeah.
reported back yet.
And maybe the monster you fight has a piece of their uniform or something on them as
Right.
a clue. And you could put like, you could do a cool 2d6 rumors table, like the villagers, like you hear little whispers of people saying like, oh, I heard that they were taken by the ghosts of the Moors or whatever you want to put in there.
Or like
you know?
going in line with the whole magic thing. Maybe there's rumors that there's somebody using magic out just basically on the edge of town, like a little area.
Right.
And it's real basic magic, but they've captured the scouting group because they're going
Right.
to try and do something with magic that's way above their status in life.
Right. Way above their
lot.
pay grade.
Way
Their,
above.
Their top secret clearance.
So you could
Yeah, I like
have
that.
you could have that ritual even going down, and if the players don't make a move, like when they find out the squad's missing, that's going
Right.
to happen anyway. But if
Right,
they
have
leave
have an event
immediately,
clock for it.
right, they could leave
Yeah.
immediately and go interrupt it and save the town's guards.
Right.
Or if they wait too long, the magic goes off, creates a bigger urgency, then they have to go confront it and then be
Right.
like, oh, 2 of the dudes are dead. But they don't know, as players, you wouldn't know that you had the option to save them.
Right, right.
And it's not good or bad if you don't or do save them. It doesn't matter. It's
But
a
if you-
scenario.
if you do save them, maybe like if they really, you reward the players who really pay attention. If they do
Yeah.
save them, maybe they get a little extra information as to what's
Right.
going on. Like they saw, like these priests are part of something bigger. Like that's leading
Right.
to like
You get to
something
hear
else.
what that magic user was saying to the guards
right
before he
overheard
killed
that.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you save them, so that gives you a
Yeah.
little more insight. But if they die, you don't get to know that, but you still get other information to lead you to what you want to know.
Yeah. And I don't think either of us intended this, but it's kind of this already. This session is showing you how we're planning it. It's kind of the emergent property of this campaign is kind of like almost the PCs are solving a mystery, you know? So I want to say, again, I got this info from WebDM, but it might be Gumshoe or it might be the Alexandrian blog, but they talk about the 3 clue rule. So don't assume your players are going to find the 1 clue you plant. So you could put like 3. So 1 if they save the 2 soldiers and they have information. 1 that's like in the bushes, and then 1 that's like the arcane diagrammer. You know, you can
Right.
you can sprinkle them Salt Bay style around
Nice.
the around the things. So that's pretty good. I want to play this session. Sounds fun.
Yeah, and that
Somebody should run
first encounter could be pretty, like, you could give the players a good smack around, give some minions,
Oh yeah.
especially if they show up late and the players, the scouts are the patrol's dead. You could have there be like a bunch of little like methods or something, or some little
Right.
weird
Something
thing.
magical.
And then there's the actual caster that you'd have to face off with.
Right.
Or if you were there in time, then there's not as many minions, so the encounter might be a little bit easier.
Right.
There's so many options based on like what the players do. Like for fucking who knows.
I like the clock because you can just do that, and then the players can do what they do.
Yeah.
My thing is because, and we both know this, you're going to have to lay heavy clues down that there's some kind of urgency, or else they won't know. You have to make it more obvious than you feel like it should. So maybe a lot of the rumors are heavy with rumblings and grumblings about some kind of ritual taking place, or some dark magician off in the boonies, or stuff to kind of be able to get the PCs a little worried, you know. My mind also goes to like the monster you fight in the town that has like the minions and stuff. Like, what signs does it have that it's been affected by magic? Like, what changes take place? Because it's a good opportunity to be, for me, it's like, oh, I've never made a D100 table. Maybe you could make like a random table for like the effects that happen when you use magic, and give it that demonic flavor. So that's a good outline. I think that's good. I like it.
That's enough. That's as a basic understanding of what your session's going to include. That would be like your framework. Right. And so you'd want to like say, okay, in my brain, you definitely want to like flesh out maybe a shop or two of some sort, because the players may engage in something like that before they go out.
If they have gold,
Right. Yeah. And so flesh out just two. Like, you don't need to make them anything. Like, it doesn't matter. The players, wherever they choose to go, that's the shop they're going to. It doesn't doesn't matter. And then if they go to another one, it's just whatever the second one is.
Right.
And then I'm sure, if you create enough urgency, they're probably not going to have time to go to a third shop.
Probably not.
Even two is a bit much. Two is the backup. One shop's probably enough if you've created urgency.
Yeah. And depending upon, sometimes as a DM, you might be like, okay, I'm just going to let them kind of strategize and talk, and it's not real time. But sometimes you might be like, okay, your conversation is in real time right now, so it's time, kind of signaling that this is time sensitive, what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely.
So
yeah, that would be some stuff you'd have to flesh out. A few NPCs that they may encounter, or if they just start talking to people, or if they try to talk to the people they hear the rumors from. Right. You'll want names. Names are... We like to... All of us now that DM, anytime we're playing in a game where one of our friends is DMing, we're definitely going to like grill them about a name. The minute someone's come up, one of us is going to be like, what's their name?
Yeah, just to give them shit.
Yeah, just to give them a bunch of guff, because the name thing is... It can create some of your most beloved creatures, or someone hates.
Yeah. And that's a good thing to talk about now. There's certain lists that if you're starting up DMing, you're always going to want to have, and you'll hear every DM talk about this. Mercer talks about it. Colville talks about it. Is a list of names. Just go to fantasynamegenerator.com and just click on. They have orc names and giant names and town names and this. You can pull from whatever, but just have 3 pages of like bulleted names, so you can just look at that and be like, his name is Vingelvin. He's an elf. He makes glasses.
There you go. And make sure you note that, because what an immersive moment will be is if this character comes back and you have consistency about what his job is, like what he does,
right,
and a little piece of his personality. It could be a simple D10 table, or if you just make it up, it's fine.
Right.
Just write 2 words.
Right.
Gruff, kind. Boom. And he's a gruff, kind dude.
Yeah, and the simpler it is, the better it is. You could also do like, is there some mannerism that they have? And again, it's so cliche, but this is all in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Like these kind of ideas, not necessarily the list of names, which is insane to me, because that seems like
some of the other stuff has names in the back appendixes.
Right,
and stuff.
They do. Yeah, some of the appendices, which is nice. I think Xanathar's maybe one of those.
Yeah, there's a few that have a bunch of name lists in the back and stuff.
So it's in there, but again, if you're wanting to get started, don't don't wait to read the books because it's hard. D&D books are really hard to read straight through. I've done it. I'm glad I did it, but it's hard. It's hard to do. You'll fall
have
asleep
them or have access to them.
Have access to them, yeah.
For sure.
Again, you can buy them on D&D Beyond. You can buy them on Roll20.
Yeah.
I found out you can. Have you looked at the compendium in Roll20? Like
Well, I know that
outside of the table?
Yeah, I know that they modified it so you could it was an easier way to read through them. Yeah.
Way easier. Way better. So props to Roll20 for that. So there are certain lists that you're going to want to always have. Some of that will change depending upon what you're doing. But another one, and I use a random generator. I do not remember the web address. I will put it in the comments or on the Dooblydoo is what they call it on YouTube, I guess. So I'll put it.
Did you just say the Dooblydoo?
That's literally the technical term for all the description stuff below the video.
The Dooblydoo.
That's called the Dooblydoo. I do not lie. That's literally what's called. I looked it up because I'm like, that's not true. Nope, it's totally true.
See, now that right there, if you would be like, oh yeah, they added that word to the dictionary. That to me, I'd be like, that's fair. That's a new word. Dooblydoo.
It sounds like a programmer or graphic designer just put in a gibberish.
Yeah,
word,
it sounds like something that we'd say, like, oh, it's on the flippler over there, the
flippity bang.
That's cool.
I'll put it in the flippity bang. I will put some links in wherever you're listening to this at, or we don't, once we get a website or whatever. But it has a bunch of random tables, so I'll keep a random weather table there always. You can make these up too, really simple. You could have like stormy, clear, rain, snow, wind, maybe have unusual weather, and good rule of thumb if you're math deficient like me, like just do 2d6 table and put the extreme stuff on the end. So like 2 and 12, put your really crazy stuff and put the stuff you want to happen more in the middle. It'll
work. It's a good way. 2d6 tables are great.
They're really great. They make a nice bell curve. Some people hate them. I've seen memes recently like 1d12 table versus 2d6. And like only villains use 2d6.
Well, see, that's the thing is like the great axe is a 1d12,
right?
Or the great sword is 2d6. Now, like, which do you want to roll? I want to roll 2d6 because it's going to roll consistently higher than.
Where you're going to get that nice medium in the middle of the bell, so probably a 7 or 8.
Right,
where the 12, it's all fair game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm going to branch off real quick. One of I'm not going to say who or anything.
No.
One of the players in one of your campaigns, their character is a mess. I looked at it and was like, first of all, you have too many feats and you have too many ability score increases. And holy shit, why does your great axe do 2d12? What the hell is that?
Right.
And so since it's your game, I was like, man, I don't know what Eric okayed for this, so I'm not going to say anything about it, like in game or anything. So like, it's not my problem.
Well, I may ask you about the ASI. I haven't okayed any extra ASI, but we'll.
Oh well, what blows my mind is this character does this certain thing during combat, and I'm like, you don't get to do it that many times. That's insane.
Right. Anyways.
Right.
So, the next thing after, and again, you can plan however you want. I honestly, every time I plan, I kind of feel like it's a different thing. So these are just general guidelines, but I really found just a bulleted outline of like, okay, if I'm sitting down to run it, where do I want the first scene to be? Like when we first start playing, where are they at? Asking questions. Okay, where do I want it to end? Just basic questions will really help define what you actually need to plan. Because I used to write like 2 pages of summary, like at literary style, like, okay, this is what they do, this is where they go, and this is why, and didn't use any of it. And you're not in a headspace where you can read tons of paragraphs when you're DMing either. You need like quick, like just give me the little chunks. So bulleted lists I found to be really helpful. So once you have the outline, I start thinking about actual set pieces. And what I mean by that is like the maps, if you're being tactical. If you're doing theater of the mind, combat doesn't really matter as much. Just make sure you can describe the area. But for instance, we kind of have maybe three set pieces. Maybe the headquarters where they get sent out, but that could be theater of the mind. The outpost, right, if they're going to fight there. And also the ending, even if they don't get there, like if they pick up on the clues and they go find the missing soldiers, that kind of thing. And then maybe a random battle map or a road in nature, like for if they get an encounter on the way to the outpost. So it's like 3 to 4, something like that.
Yeah. And that's, so especially if you may not even use some of that stuff.
Yeah. But those are the things, like random battle map, road, maybe headquarters, outpost, and then your final big bad for the session or two that you're playing. And the nice thing is if you don't get through all of it, you have your next session planned.
Yeah.
So you've front loaded a bunch of your work. And then like if you're doing playing on Roll20 on a virtual tabletop, you know what maps to look for. That kind of stuff. So it gives it more clarity. Would you add anything to that, Ian?
I mean, it's as far as first session prep, I mean, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
In how like that actually goes down. Like what are you doing? How are you doing it? What do you actually do? Because, I mean, it's daunting when you're trying to do it for your first time to not know what to do. Like what's the actual procedure for starting your planning, like and this is just a way to do it, if you want to start in the middle and work forward and backwards, go for it, man. That's sweet. But I'm in a few Facebook groups that are like dungeon master oriented or game master oriented, and there's at least 3 to 5 posts a week with people talking about, hey, I'm doing my very first DM experience. Anyone have any advice for me? This is what we're doing.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of people that may find this use in hearing how a person does go set up their first one to give them their own ideas.
Right. Exactly. And you're going to have to find your own way into it. Like, that's why we keep saying just get started, because doing the first thing that comes to mind, like, I don't know, I guess I'll need a battle map. Like maybe you find it really makes sense if I get my tactical battle maps first, everything makes sense. For me, doing like a summary and kind of like bullets of like, here's all the things I need, makes it clearer, like where to spend my time, especially if I have to plan day of, which happens a lot. It just makes it a little clearer. So whatever makes sense to you, do it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Some things will work and some things won't. And the mistakes are just as valuable, if not more so, than the successes, because it tells you what not to do, that kind of thing. So I think the next thing on the list, this is something I'm newer to, but I found really useful, are your random tables. So things for weather, monsters, or encounters. I really like just saying encounters because I think it's fun to have some things that are not necessarily not going to be combat, or monsters that you don't necessarily need to fight or have the PCs kill is fun. Like a really grumpy ogre that's not running out of the bushes trying to club the PCs, but maybe he has like a splinter in his toe. And he's sitting over on
blocking the way and
shouting insults at the PCs.
Right. Just throwing rocks at them, and not big boulders, just rocks. Just hitting them for like 2 points of damage constantly as they're trying to get by.
Right. Yep. And then rumor tables. So if you're in a town area, especially if you're doing more open-ended, this is more important. But like if you go into the tavern, the townsfolk are talking about things and gossiping, and you can lay in clues and adventure hooks and stuff into these rumor
Absolutely.
tables. You don't have to make them tables either. You don't have to make them something you roll if you know what you want. But it's really helpful if you need things on the fly. Reaction tables also for like your NPCs and monsters, how they react to the PCs.
Oh, those are so funny.
Yeah. You can have faction group and group tables for what things are going on behind the scenes while the PCs are playing in session, and also world events too. So if you don't know what those mean, don't worry, we'll explain as we go. You don't need to know it all. But random tables are basically just a list of things attached to a number. So maybe you have a D6 table, and you have a goblin on 1, and then you have an ogre on 2 and 3. You have a giant on 4. You have a, let's say, dragon on 5 and a Tarrasque on 6. And so you need an encounter.
Jeez.
I know it escalated quickly. I know. You need an encounter. You roll that D6 and you come up with a 4, which is, what do we say, an ogre? I think.
Sure.
Or maybe a giant. Giant. So then you don't really. It takes some of the thinking out if you need something quick.
Right.
But if you know what you want, you don't need a table. So.
Yeah.
And along with that, clocks, which come from Blades in the Dark, and that's basically making a circle with and dividing that circle into sections. So it could be just dividing it into quarters, so you have 4 sections. And these are really good for if you need something to count down outside of the player's awareness. So maybe like there's a orcish horde coming over the hill, and they're going to attack the stronghold that the PCs have taken over, and the PCs are trying to fortify, and every so often you roll to see if this clock progresses, and once you fill up all the spaces on the clock, that army shows up. So it's not just off your whim. You actually have a timetable for things to kind of roll forward. Again, going back to dynamic stuff. So
Yeah.
do you have anything to add?
Not to that. I mean, I feel like that was a little bonus for planning.
A little boner.
Yeah.
Bony. And then one thing I do a lot, and sometimes they do this first, are flavor descriptors. A lot of times they're adjectives. So instead of writing out flavor text like you would see in a published module, I found it much more helpful just to have kind of inspirations for the texture of the environment the PCs are in. So if they're in a dark cave, it's uncomfortably dank. Or this is a real word, moistly dripping. I was like, that's a real word? Yep.
What?
Okay. I'm using it. Impenetrable darkness, echoing animal cries, boggy, cloistered air. Just things to give it like, ooh, that puts you in the space more.
Right.
So having a nice list, you don't really need more than 6. 6 to 12. You won't use them all. And then the other stuff is just details like your maps again. So like if you're doing it online, you're probably going to use a lot more maps than if you're playing on an actual tabletop. Your music, which I think we're going to do a whole episode on like our favorite D&D music, because we have a lot of music we like.
I even found some extra today.
Nice. Video game music is great. But anyways, we'll get to that. And then you might need handouts. Like maybe if they find a clue of like a paper with some code on it, you can make a little handout. If you're in person, you can actually make something for the characters, the players to touch. You might need to make tokens for your monsters. If you're in Roll20, you got to do dynamic lighting. So there's extra stuff, but you can leave all that aside at first. So that's what I got.
That's what I got.
That's what I got.
Well, we hope it was.
I think that's a good place to stop, yeah?
Yeah, I hope you guys had fun listening.
And if you've made it all the way through and you have questions or opinions on anything we've said, comment, let us know, all the stuff.
Message us, tell us things.
Tell us all the things. Not all the things.
Yeah.
Some of the things. Okay, one thing. You can tell us one thing.
Maybe 2 if you're real nice.
Bitches. Anyways, we love you. Ian, do you want to sign us off?
I'll sign us off.
Yep.
Stay sweaty.
It's good. It's smoky. This has been a Polymuse creative production. Music was provided by Jerry Stenquist. To check his music out, go to soundcloud.com/Jerry-Stenquist. Until next time, roll high and take a point of inspiration. Like, share, subscribe!